In 1973, William Friedkin unleashed The Exorcist upon the unsuspecting world, creating a global phenomenon in the process. This film was a magnet for controversy when it was released, and it was loaded with talented performers who would either become stars or simply reaffirm their already hard-earned star status. There was even a rumor that there was a curse on the finished film with numerous deaths and misfortunes attributed to it and anybody associated with the film, but that mostly turned out to be just a bunch of hogwash conjured up by the filmmakers to drum up publicity. However, there would indeed be one person involved in the film that would become well known for a much darker reason than the Exorcist curse. There's a scene in the film where little Reagan, played by Linda Blair, undergoes a medical procedure called a cerebral angiograph, which allows doctors to clearly see the blood vessels in a patient's brain under an X-ray. While the procedure in the film is a staged reenactment, it's an actual medical team that Friedkin had met during pre-production doing the procedure. In the background of this scene is an actual trained radiographer named Paul Bateson. He's only seen for like maybe a few seconds of film, but he's also the one who calmly explains the play-by-play of the procedure to Reagan in order to reassure her and keep her calm. According to other medical professionals who had worked with Bateson before, he was absolutely invaluable in that regard because he had this very naturally calming demeanor to help keep child patients and their parents at ease, making it incredibly shocking to everyone when 4 years after the release of The Exorcist, he'd be arrested for committing a truly brutal crime and considered a suspect in a series of murders that to this very day remain unsolved. Paul Bateson was born in Lansdale, Pennsylvania on August 24, 1940. His childhood and home life was not what one would call entirely happy, and he sought some escape by joining the Army in the early 1960s. However, while he was stationed in Germany, he would develop a lifelong addiction to alcohol. Eventually, he was discharged and returned to his hometown. By 1964, he moved to New York, where he discovered that he was attracted to men and got involved in a relationship with a fellow who unfortunately fed his drinking problem. Despite his addiction, Bateson studied hard and successfully became licensed as a radiographer, eventually ending his troubled relationship in 1973 and getting a job at the New York University Medical Center, where he was apparently well-liked and admired by his colleagues, eventually landing his cameo in The Exorcist that same year. However, shortly after The Exorcist was released, Bateson's drinking problem got worse, and he lost his job. He eventually started cruising bathhouses and gay bars in an effort to possibly find another man interested in a long-term relationship. A search that would eventually lead to a horrifying discovery on September 14, 1977. Addison Verrill, a film reporter with Variety, was found dead in his apartment. He had been severely beaten and stabbed repeatedly. While there had been signs of a struggle, police didn't believe that it was a robbery gone wrong, considering that there were no signs of forced entry and nothing valuable was missing. With the discovery of numerous empty beer cans and half-empty glasses of liquor scattered around, the authorities came to the conclusion that Verrill must have known his attacker and let him into the apartment. Shortly after the investigation began, a friend of Verrill's named Arthur Bell, who was also a gay activist and journalist, wrote an article about the murder for the Village Voice where he stated his opinion that the killer was likely a violent psychopath targeting gay men. This article prompted an unexpected response from the killer himself. 8 days after the murder, the killer called Bell on his home phone. He told Bell that he had read his article and liked his writing, but clarified that he wasn't the psychopathic killer that he had been characterized as. He explained to Bell that he met Verrill at a local gay bar the night before where he bought him a beer. Afterwards, the two men visited at least 2 other bars where they drank, did some cocaine, and had a very good time. Eventually, the 2 of them went back to Verrill's apartment where they drank some more, had a little more cocaine, and then had sex. The killer stated that after the rendezvous was over, Verrill wanted to call it a night because he had to go to work the next day. Overcome by intoxication, desperation, and anger for a perceived rejection, the killer confessed that he beat Verrill unconscious with a frying pan from his kitchen and then stabbed him with a knife. After Verrill was dead, he stole $57 in cash, his MasterCard, passport, some clothes, and then left the apartment. Before hanging up, the killer let slip that while he was desperate to atone for his crime, he would not be giving himself up to police because, quote, "I wouldn't be able to practice again. I'd lose my license," unquote. Bell immediately went to the police with the details from the phone call, and while the information was indeed the biggest break in the case so far, it still wasn't enough to positively identify anyone in particular. Eventually, another man named Mitch would contact Bell and told him that the killer was an unemployed X-ray technician he knew who had confessed to him that he had indeed killed Viral. The unemployed technician was Paul Bateson. Soon after Mitch's call, Bateson was arrested, and while in custody, he admitted to the murder and signed a statement. However, at his arraignment, his lawyer had him plead not guilty due to two issues. The first was Bateson being heavily intoxicated at the time of his arrest, making him highly susceptible to persuasion. The second issue was that detectives who questioned Bateson supposedly neglected to read him his Miranda rights. Bateson went on trial for second-degree murder in March of 1979. The trial lasted just 4 short days and ended with him being convicted and sentenced to 20 years to life. Around the time of his arrest and pretrial incarceration, Bateson became a suspect in a series of killings in and around the New York area that is referred to as the Bag Murders. An unidentified individual from 1975 to 1977 had murdered and dismembered 6 men, placing their body parts in plastic bags, and then throwing those bags into the Hudson River where they were later discovered. While there was and is still no way to identify the remains, there were scraps of leather clothing found in the bags, which forensics linked to various clothing stores that catered to the gay community, hinting that the killer was targeting gay men specifically. What made the police suspect that Bateson had something to do with it? Well, the compelling yet circumstantial evidence included the fact that the body parts had been removed with precise cuts from a knife, meaning that the killer had some medical training, and the body parts were found in plastic bags that had branding linking them to the neuropsychiatric unit of New York University Medical Center, the same hospital where Bateson had been previously employed and where his fateful cameo in The Exorcist was filmed. While the police were fairly confident that Bateson was the perpetrator of the bag murders, no charges were ever filed against him and the case is still considered unsolved. Eventually, Bateson was released from prison in 2003 after serving 24 years and successfully completed his parole in 2008 before dropping off the face of the earth. While no one really knows where his true whereabouts are for sure, a record found in the Social Security Death Index seems to suggest that he died in September of 2012. So now comes the time to tackle the central question: what was Paul Bateson? Was he a deranged serial killer who had escaped justice for all but one of his terrible crimes? Was he simply an out-of-control alcoholic who committed a violent crime in a fit of rage? Or could he possibly have been an unwitting victim of a purported curse on the iconic film that he was a part of? Well, I simply choose to believe that he was nothing more than an extremely tortured soul who made a series of bad judgments that culminated in his making a horrifically tragic mistake. It's possible that he may have committed the infamous bag murders, but the evidence is so highly circumstantial and it's far from conclusive in my opinion. If you like this video, please show your support by hitting the like button and sharing it with your friends. If you're curious about my future content and want to hear more creepy stories, then please subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you'll be notified when new content is uploaded. Until next time, have a lovely day, stay safe out there, and most importantly,
stay creepy.